This is Susan Wilbanks with blendedinsight.com. I am a holistic and integrative healing arts practitioner, an intuitive, and an energy healer. In this podcast, I share tips, tools, and suggestions that have helped me along my path in hopes of inspiring and helping you along yours. Let's get started with today's podcast topic. Hey, bright soul. Thank you so much for joining me on another podcast. I want to tell you that I appreciate you so much. Thank you for all of your support, your feedback, your reviews, your donations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It really means a lot. And I really appreciate your patience with my busy summer, getting my daughter to the next phase of her journey in college, which also it's a new beginning and a new phase for me. And with all of the activity, I've built in periods of rest to take really good care of myself so I can continue to do this work and be a light and a vessel for others, because we can't give from an empty cup. We know that. The days of burning the candle at both ends for me are over. So I'm now living a balanced life because that's what my soul is calling me to do. I took a pranic healing psychotherapy class. I'd already taken the class, but I reviewed it and took it because we had an instructor in town. It was a long day. It was a 12-hour day, about 12 and a half hours of learning how to help people cope with stress and addictions. And again, I've already taken it, so I already had those skills. But when you review a class, you always get something more of it. And when you have an instructor coming in, no different than if you go to church and there's a pastor responding to the people who are listening, no different than if you and I are in a private session. When you are in the flow and you're in spirit, what the person and the people need comes through. So because of that, each class always has something different to offer. And a lot of times there's things that come through that are off topic. So it's part of my commitment to this work to attend those classes and continue to deepen myself and continue to grow so that I can help you by sharing what I've learned. Now, if it doesn't resonate and it doesn't help you, that's one thing. But usually there's something for someone. Otherwise, I wouldn't be called to do it. So I did that. I'm also still committed to learning about local laws and how to continue to be a sovereign being and help myself move through these transitions while maintaining connected and sovereign, spending time outside, doing all the things that I've been talking about for the past year. I'm committed to doing those things for myself, which is why I can speak so freely about it when I'm talking to you, because these are things that are helping me, and we all have things that we're drawn to at different times. It's up to us to filter that through our intuition and continue to follow our own path. So what I wanted to talk about today is something that everyone's been dealing with on some level, and that is heartbreak, growing through heartbreak. One of the things that has been a real sticking point for me over the years is victim mentality, because it really does not serve you. I'm not saying that you can't be a victim of something, but you don't have to take on the identity. And with the world being such a mess, people that have not done their spiritual work, or even people that have done their spiritual work that are just getting knocked down, I am seeing a repetitive theme of woe is me, they did this, and a lack of accountability. And let me explain. I have been through tremendous heartbreak in my life. Over and over, I co-created in dysfunctional relationships with people who took from me. They were takers, they were dishonest, they lacked integrity, and I've started over more times than I can even tell you. I grew up in a dysfunctional household with an alcoholic mother, with a father who was in the home but absent emotionally. He was physically there, but he wasn't emotionally present because he was trying to deal with his own stuff. And him and I healed that and became close later in life. But growing up, it was tough. I grew up with two older brothers who my mother favored because it was a generational thing that she repeated. She didn't do her healing work, so she repeated that pattern. And so I kind of raised myself. I was a victim of molestation at a young age. I was beat up by my brothers. I grew up like fighting. I had all of these things. I would pick people who would continue to perpetuate that wound because I had no self-love inside me. I had no self-esteem, no direction. I winged it. I was winging it. So I graduated high school a year early. I went into the military because I needed an escape and I was so lost. I would connect with different cultures to try to find out who I was because I didn't fit. I didn't fit in my family of origin. I didn't fit in the world because I had these gifts that were shut down at an early age on top of all of the other things. So I was a walking wreck, a walking disaster. So then I met my daughter's father, who is really narcissistic. I know that's an overused word. When people call everyone a narcissist now, it grinds my gears because not everyone's a narcissist, but we kind of grab these words and start labeling everyone. We do it, but I'm telling you, he has very core characteristics of a narcissistic person. He's incredibly selfish. He's been absent from my daughter. He's caused more harm than good. He doesn't really want to help in any regard. And when he does get involved, it usually makes things worse. But you know what? The only common denominator in all of these situations is me. I'm the only common denominator. All roads point back to me. I'm not blaming myself, but I'm taking accountability for how I showed up in every scenario in my life. When you take accountability, you can do something about it. But if you're placing the blame externally, you have no control and you continue to feel more helpless. It's just the way it is. So here's the thing. Through divorcing my daughter's father, I got remarried. I remarried someone who was incredibly selfish. He had some good qualities, but again, it's my fault because in the beginning, I did not speak up for how I felt. I did not speak up for his unwillingness to do his part. He was either unwilling or unable to do his part. And so what I did as someone who was wounded, who was trying to prove her worth through over-functioning, which is what we do in codependent relationships, it can show up in all different ways. But because I had been over-functioning and essentially raising myself with no support system and raising my daughter, and it took a toll on my health that I had to figure out on my own. Plus, she had her own things that she had inherited from her father, and he didn't help. He was actually looking at me, asking me to solve it for her and then tell him the solution so that he could make himself better instead of him trying to do it. Because this is the kind of person he is. He's just like the most unwilling and lazy individual to this day because he hasn't done his healing work. He's unwilling or unable to do his healing work. But I had it from all angles. And all of these things, I'm not psychically attacking anyone. I am not a victim. I'm saying these are core qualities in people. And if you ask them about me, they'll have a whole list of things that they didn't like about me. I'm quite confident because that's the way it goes. All relationships, we see all relationships through our own lenses until we get a clearer picture and a clearer view. And I only share these things about previous relationships. And I mean, it even goes to work situations. I was sexually harassed in so many of my work centers, and I would have to put up with that. And it was just a really uncomfortable, vulnerable state of being that I lived in for many, many years until I started really facing myself. And let's not mention that I lost my brother. My brother and my cousin passed away when they were only 22. I had just joined the military. So I lost, and that was the brother I was closest to. He passed away, and my cousin was like a brother to all of us. So we lost a big part of our family in that accident. Plus, my brother had met someone, got her pregnant. It was a disaster. She's a disaster. But my nephew was born a few weeks later. So we had all these weird dynamics. And then you fast forward 10 years, and then my other brother passed away. So I don't have siblings anymore. Last year, my father passed away. I'm the lone survivor people in my family. My mom has dementia because of her alcohol use. So she's checked out. Her body's here, but she's not here. And I'm telling you all these things to tell you that I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing because all things are lessons that the universe, that God, that creator would have us learn. Everything that is happening around us is something for us to learn. It's how you build. It is how you build resilience. It is how you grow. And these situations continue to come up until you get the lesson. And I know people don't want to hear that because who wants lessons? This is tough work we're doing. Most people will just repeat the pattern, and it will continue to be what is called a generational curse in the Christian tradition because they'll just repeat the pattern. And that's what my family did. They just repeated the pattern, and nobody wanted to do that heavy work to face themselves and look at this and get some tools and make some shifts and make some changes. I did that, friends. I did that for myself, and I did that for my daughter. And here's the thing. we don't get better without challenges. Nobody is faced. Well, let me back up. We typically do not try to change unless there's a reason to change. You think about, I like to be physical. I like to be active. So when I go to the gym and lift weights, the only way I'm going to grow muscle is by lifting enough weights to challenge myself. The muscles tear, and then I recover and rebuild. And then I can go in and tear a little bit more, and then I recover them and rebuild. This is the only way we get stronger. And so heartbreak is a part of that. How do you know how to appreciate someone who is loving and authentic and kind if you haven't ever experienced the opposite extreme? Have you ever just had someone randomly be so rude to you, and then you meet someone that's so kind? Oh my goodness, that kind person is such a gem. You want to just grab them and take them home and just eat them up because you're so appreciative of the kindness. But without that contrast, the appreciation doesn't come. And so we, as human beings, and those of us who have accepted a higher mission, a tough mission, we're all on important missions or else we wouldn't be here. For those of us who have chosen to break those patterns for our family lineage, who have come in to change and to shift and to hold a bigger vision, a bigger light, we are going to have bigger lessons. And when you get on this spiritual path and you're actually working for the divine, those messages and those lessons are going to come in more strong for you so that you can help more people. I mean, that's just the way that it goes. And so one of the main ways that I'm able to shift myself in heartbreak is, first of all, seeing it as I'm not a victim. How did I show up, and how can I take responsibility? And I hear this all the time where people will say, well, I didn't ask to be born to this family, and this family did this to me, and this did that to me, and they're so victimized. And I went through that. So I'm not invalidating that emotion because I went through that. I used to feel so victimized. I would watch people who had these loving, supportive families who they could share with, and I didn't have that. I didn't have safe people to share with. I kept everything in. Oh my gosh, friends, you wouldn't even recognize me back in those days. My first boyfriend in high school was just a toxic dumpster fire. I'm not saying poor things about him, but he also had healing work to do. Why in the world would I attract a healthy person when I myself had no self-worth and I was unhealed? So subconsciously, I would then pick partners to continue to perpetuate that wound until I went within and healed that and looked at myself and faced myself. So I was pessimistic. I was angry. I was an absolute wreck. So the difference is that I chose to face myself and shift out of that and align to something higher. Now, I will say, like my previous partners, I was always the one that wanted to leave, and I was always the one that chose to leave. I would outgrow it, but it took a while. I mean, when I look back at my relationships, I can see how each relationship was a little better until I got to a level that was healthy. But it took time, and it took me continually facing myself. It took me continually picking myself up and seeing what I need to learn, what I need to shift. And there's always going to be something to shift and learn, because as long as we're here, we're not done learning. It's about picking people and situations that are willing to grow with you. And if they're not growing with you, then you outgrow them. I only outgrow things that don't grow. Now, I'm not saying we're not growing in some incremental shifts, but on the spiritual path, my growth is by leaps and bounds because of the work that I'm doing. And so this is my suggestion, or this is just how I've gotten through it. You do. If it doesn't resonate, please don't get on here and start arguing for your limitations and you're a victim and this happened to you. That type of talk is so disempowering, and that's why I get it, but I'm not going to energize it, and I'm not going to go there with you, especially with all of the things that I've had to move through and hold all by myself. No one taught me this stuff. I had to get in the gutter and learn it. I had to seek it out, stay up at night. I was working ridiculous hours and taking care of my daughter and fighting my ex-husband in court for little pennies of child support that he never wanted to pay. It was just a wreck. And so I had to say, okay, why am I continuing to align with these situations? Number one, not from a victim standpoint, but from a responsibility standpoint. Two, how can I grow through this and shift it and make a better choice next time? Three, of all of the times I've had to start over, by the grace of God, I was able to start over. And I shifted my mentality to say, I am here because I can start over and I can get through this. And at the end of the day, these material things, I can't take them with me, but I can take my soul development. And so that is what I'm focused on. I want to be in integrity. I want to treat people well. And if they take advantage of me, that's on them. But my intent and my karma, my good karma, still goes with me for the good that I did. And if they are mistreating or being ugly, that's their own karma, and I will allow God to deal with that. For me, I have to stay aligned with the highest path. And then I learned how to meet my own needs. I learned how to say no when it doesn't feel good. In my second marriage, I cannot blame him for the way he didn't help out or show up, because I was still in people pleasing and bending over backwards and over functioning. And because of my gifts, I can see to the heart of people and see the good in them. And I can look past the wounding, which is a great gift, but it's also something that can also be blinding because, follow your heart, but take your brain with you. You've got to be able to also speak your boundaries and take care of your body while you're following your heart. And so that relationship taught me that. It taught me how I am a good, open-hearted person, and he's a good, open-hearted person too. He's not a bad person. It's nothing like my daughter's father. I mean, completely. I had grown so much. I aligned with someone who was in a better place. However, he had very selfish qualities. He would just go to work and that's it. He didn't help with anything else. But again, did he need to? No, because I wasn't saying anything. That's on me. That's not on him. But when I did start to say something and I put my foot down and I established those boundaries, that's when it started to get rocky because he didn't want to do all of the things that I wanted him to do. But if I had spoke that in the beginning, the relationship would have ended. You see what I mean? So I was in it longer than I should have because it did not work for me. Of course it worked for him. He didn't want to split. Who would want to split when you're just being taken care of and everything is just magically appearing and you're just going to work? I mean, again, it wasn't sustainable. So it goes back to me. And when I set those boundaries and decided I was no longer going to be in this mess that I created that mess. Then, of course, we parted, and then I got to get into some really deep work at facing myself. And I did that work, friends. I did that work. And I'm here to tell you, you can do that work. It's work, though. And that's why sometimes when I get on these podcasts, people will say, I've had private clients that I've worked with for a long time. They'll go, geez, Susan, you were kind of harsh in that podcast. And I'm like, sometimes we need that. In the spiritual movement, spirituality has to be carried out in practicality. So I'm going to see you where you are, and I will hold the space for you. I will allow you to be vulnerable, and I will be very soft with you because I do understand. Sometimes we also need a kick in the butt. Sometimes we need to be able to be spoken to in a way that bypasses the emotion and gets to the heart of it, because it's not just going to miraculously happen. I believe in miracles, and I know God can move in miraculous ways. Oftentimes, the energy is there, the support is there, but we have to get moving on it. So that's why in the Bible it says faith without works is dead. You've got to do the work. So as many times as I've mended my heart, I will tell you this is how I did it. Owning my part and looking at what I learned from the relationship, because in each relationship, it helped me to get better. In each loss, when my family members are just dropping off. I mean, last year, my father passed away tragically and unexpectedly. And then my aunt, a few months later, passed away. And it was devastating. And I was in the middle of a move and dealing with a teenager. And my mother went into a home, and right after I moved, they thought she had a heart attack. And I was exhausted with the move because the people that I bought the home from left it dirty, and they were really just strange people. I'm not even going to go into that. And I'm not judging them. I mean, it's just a fact. Everyone was creeped out by these people. I say everyone, I mean like my realtor, my neighbors, my daughter, my friends. Like, it was creepy. But again, I came in to transmute that energy. So in every situation, I look at myself. What is this here to teach me? And how can I turn this into something positive? Like, my daughter's favorite quote is by Oprah Winfrey. And I know some people don't like Oprah. Guys, let's not get caught up in that. Just think about the message. Turn your wounds into wisdom. And I've committed my life to doing that. And that's why I'm not afraid to open my heart in love. I love very openly, and I love softly, and I love hard, because I know that I'm going to be okay. And I know how to take care of myself. And I want that for you. Breath work helps me. Of course, energy healing, sitting with myself, facing myself, being present with myself, meeting my own needs. I did that a lot last year. I allowed myself to fall apart. I used to have a problem with showing emotion because all emotion was shut down when I was growing up. It was a very numbed out, disconnected upbringing. And so, and I would get made fun of for any emotion. If I got my feelings hurt at all, I would get made fun of. I mean, my mom would make fun of me for having period cramps. I mean, outwardly, she would make fun of me. And so I had to hold everything in. And again, my mom is not a horrible person. I love my mom. I love my parents. She's unhealed. And again, it goes back to everyone is doing the best they can with the tools that they have at this time. So it's more or less about you learning how to set boundaries and take care of yourself and focus on your own path. I'm not saying to excuse behavior, but at the time I was a child, I couldn't say anything. It didn't fly when I got older. And that's why we're not close, and we had a distant relationship, because I would call her out, but then she would just drink more, and we just wouldn't get along. So I learned that. I learned that from my childhood. So I learned self-reliance. I learned independence. I learned how to feel emotion later in life on the spiritual path. And honestly, the numbing patterns that I had growing up served me very well, because I would not have been able to function in such a toxic household if I had been emotionally open. I didn't have the tools. My brain wasn't fully developed to be able to process emotions and get stronger. But that came later. And so I can look at each thing and say, wow, I was really being refined. I was being refined, and now I'm the best version of myself I've ever been. And I'm so open, and I'm present, and I feel so strong. And I wouldn't take anything from it. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today. I know so many people are going through heartbreak right now, and I completely empathize with you. And I'm here to tell you that all things are lessons that God would have us learn. We don't ever get better unless we're tested. And I know the tests get old. Like, I've also had this conversation a lot where you think you've healed a relational pattern or a trigger, and then a situation arises and you find yourself slipping. How else would you know if you healed that unless you were tested? This is how we grow. You don't know. You wouldn't know. It's no different than when I go to the gym. If I don't attempt to lift a heavier weight, how do I know I got stronger? I have to attempt it. And a lot of times I attempt to lift a heavy weight, and I laugh at myself because I think it's funny when my muscles completely fail and I'm lifting something with all my might, and then I just collapse because I cannot lift it. I know I look silly, but it's funny to me because I'm like, well, Susan, you didn't get that. You got to keep working. And that's what I choose to do. I choose to keep working and staying open and moving through these things. So I don't want to repeat, because I feel like I'm being very repetitive. When I record these podcasts, I, of course, have first meditated. I've tuned in. I've turned the healing on. So when I am repetitive, it's because there's a layer that needs to be penetrated. There's a layer that needs to be reached. And repetition is the mother of skill. So as we repeat, we get better and better. So I would just encourage you, look at this as an opportunity to grow. Look at this as like a milestone check. It's a milestone check. Okay, I thought I mastered this, but I didn't master it. Let's do it again. Let's relook at this And let's choose to move through it this time, knowing that we're victors, we're not victims. And you can heal from this and you can handle it. And the reason I know you can handle it is because you're experiencing it. We aren't giving more than we can handle. We're really not giving more than we can handle. It's where do you turn? Because when external circumstances are hard, I turn inside, but not inside myself in terms of being shut down. I mean inside my intuition, which is coming from my higher self, from above, from my spiritual cord, from my crown chakra. That's where I turn. And so a lot of times when people get real lazy with their spiritual practice, the rug gets yanked. Why is that? Because spirit wants you to turn inward to get your direction. And when things are all good on the surface, people tend to disconnect from that because they're like, oh, I don't need it. Everything's good. And then the rug gets yanked. And then you have to go back to your spiritual practice so that you can stay close and deepen and get your direction. Have you ever noticed that? I know it's been the case for me. So I don't want to make this any longer. I just wanted to come on here and encourage you, share a little bit about what I'm dealing with or how I've dealt with it to move through this, because I'm here to provide a helping hand. I'm okay to do a helping hand. I don't want to get in the pit with you, but from a higher place, I can reach down and say, you can do it. And I'm evidence that you can. And also, you're always connected spiritually. So follow your own guidance, follow your own intuition, and you're going to be just fine. So let's go into a healing. You can uncross your arms and legs, and I will turn the energy healing on. I'm just grounding you, and then I will close the energy. Running shields. Okay, and so it is. Friends, thank you so much for being here and continuing to show up and being so kind and supportive and leaving all of your sweet sentiments and the donations. I really appreciate. And please know that I always program those to come back to you many, many, many times, spiritually, materially, and financially. I mean it. And I want to wish you a beautiful week. Get out and enjoy the weather. Take really good care of yourself. This is going to pass. This will pass. And we'll continue to move through for as long as we're meant to be here. And we have each other, and that's important. Take care. Bye-bye.